Today, I'm sitting with my new friend, Ginger Curtis, who started and runs an organization called Urbanology Designs. This interview is riveting. You are not going to want to miss the story of the behind the scenes of Ginger and just getting to hear her journey of going from dreaming to doing. This is such a great interview. I can't wait for you to listen. Welcome, Ginger, to the Dreamers to Doers podcast. This is so fun. I am excited to have you here. And for those of you who are just listening, you should come find the video because the background that Ginger has behind her is just stunning. And it is just the tiniest taste of who she is and what she produces. Ginger, I was so honored to get to meet you and get to know you. We've kind of become fast friends and fun fact. I kind of like to start about a fun fact about how we've met or just connected or what I know about you. I don't know too many fun, wild, embarrassing things, which is what I really love to start with. But the funny thing I was thinking back to, we got in the car together. We were going to an event and we just both happened to land at the airport at the same time, got picked up at the same time, got in the car. And I don't even know how we got on talking about it, but you started sharing your story. And I could have fallen out of my seat just listening. And it was like drinking from a fire hydrant from the moment we left the airport to the event. And it was just blew me away. So incredible. And I feel like that was such a sweet time for me. I was really felt so encouraged by what you shared. So I am really honored and excited to have you on. And Ginger, another fun fact about that particular gathering, which is really one of the only times we've hung out, but we were going to a messenger event, John and Lisa's ministry, John and Lisa Bevere, and you wrote a book, Beauty by Design. And it's this beautiful coffee table book, which I immediately Amazoned after we got out of the car. I was like, I will get that on Amazon right now. So go on and do yourself a favor. But amazing book. And the funny thing about her coming to this event was that Lisa had that book, right? And she found you on Instagram, I think, because she was reading the book and was so, again, just riveted by your story. And you thought it was spam because you're like,
I thought somebody hacked into my Instagram account and was pretending to be Lisa Bevere, and I started just panicking.
yeah.
And so I was like, "What? I don't even know what to do right now." So I was like, "Well," because she's like, "Ginger, I read your book, and I just like God stopped me like in my tracks, and He spoke to my heart, and and I was like, "What on earth is happening?" And so I was like, "Well, this is obviously spam, but like, let's just see what happens when I
Yeah.
respond." And
And then there we are in Nashville, Tennessee, together in a car going to an event. I mean, that is wild and amazing. And I feel like the honor is all mine because I got to meet you and hear your story. And tell me just a nugget about, so obviously we just talked about the book, but really the greater thing that you are working on right now and doing is Urbanology, which is your design firm company. Can you talk just a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I founded the company back in 2015 after surviving a long like treatment for cancer and also my daughter as well. We both went through back to back cancer battles, and so it was the season of God really stirring some things in my heart, and so much was birthed through that trial and through those obstacles. And I really love this phrase. There was a book I read called "The Obstacle Is the Way," and I'm like, that is literally my
Hmm.
life story and the things that are birthed out through having to face really hard things. And one of the beautiful things that was birthed out of a really difficult season was the Lord speaking to my heart that there was something big coming, and it felt like I had like a coffee pot stuck in my chest, and it was bubbling and percolating and
Hmm.
stewing and simmering, and I could just feel that. I mean, it was just constantly there, and he he called me to do this, and the story is just as is it's the wild wild west. It's a total roller coaster. It's a little unbelievable at times, but I started the design firm. It's called Urbanology Designs, and so we do new construction, renovation, furnishings and decor. If it involves a home that you live in or even a commercial space, we can do it, and we do
Mm,
projects all over the country. And it's like the Lord has given me a ministry through my work, and so much of that is this understanding that was birthed in some of these trials of why our environments are wildly important, yeah, for us and how we live on a daily basis. One of the chapters in my book is called no, that's the title, Beauty by Design. You are worthy of beauty.
mm.
And it, again, a season of difficulty, coming out of that, understanding that I was worthy of beauty and that I needed to create it for myself during a time of extreme hardship. And just like the story and the
Wow.
floodgates of like God's blessing opening. Now it wasn't easy. Trust me, I've got all the
Yeah.
stories to share.
Okay, but
But yeah, so that's,
going back to that piece, which I feel like is already so powerful about how this was birthed from just a place of hardship and pain. And did you always know that you had something that you were going to do that was so significant or so on this scale? Did you ever see yourself being in this place, or was it truly in that space of hardship that it kind of birthed?
I grew up in second oldest. I'm gonna really try not to cry. Second oldest of seven kids, four girls, three boys in that order. And in the third grade, I was diagnosed with dyslexia, and I really just kind of like believed my entire life that I really was just stupid, that I was only capable of so much. And nobody's intention was to make me feel stupid, but
Sure.
I understood the environment around me. I understood that when I had to leave the school and go to the portable buildings, like what that meant. And I was so ashamed and embarrassed. And I was in the third grade three times because I simply could
Wow.
not learn my sight words. And,
Yeah.
it was just this struggle. And so I had this lie really that I believed all through my childhood and my young adult years into, yeah, adolescence through adult years, that I was only capable of doing so much because I wasn't smart enough,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't be able to figure things out. And it really did break my heart because all I ever wanted to be was an entrepreneur. My dad was
Wow.
an entrepreneur. I felt I could feel it in my blood, but there was this fear. And so I was the last person on the planet to believe that God would use me and call me, and that He had given me the gifts and the abilities. And what I discovered through this journey is that dyslexia wasn't a disability. It was a different ability and a super strength. It was this hidden power within me. And the devil wanted to silence me, and he didn't want me to take that leap of faith. He didn't want me to take that step forward. And so he just roped me in with really believing this lie that I wasn't capable. And God, through this journey, revealed the truth. And He said, Ginger, like, you need to understand the brain of somebody who is dyslexic and the insane creative ability, and the CEOs and the entrepreneurs and the creatives and the people, and He goes, your brain works differently, and it is actually a gift. And we've labeled it as this thing, and it's just been this wild journey of freedom and permission and leaning in to something that just was a ton of breakthrough. So to answer your question, Sarah, no, I did not have these big fancy dreams. I felt like I was unqualified, I wasn't capable, and I wasn't smart enough.
Wow. I feel like that just even specifically the dyslexia piece, like my daughter was just diagnosed last year. And so even for her to get to listen or I just think these things are so powerful because whether it's dyslexia or something else, there is always a lid that I feel like the enemy from our
Mhm.
childhood or our past that kind of just sits on top, ready, you know, holding back what it is that God's intended us to step out in. So I just love that you shared that. I didn't know that part about it.
Yes, yes. There's, and I didn't understand my creativity. You
Yeah.
can see it. you could see it all through my childhood. And
Cool.
we grew up extremely poor, and there was a lot of abuse, verbally, physically. There was a lot of trauma growing up, and every year my grandparents would um, pay for us to get on the Amtrak train. My mom and seven kids, like all a year apart, if you can even imagine that scene. I can't. It's probably like wrangling cats. And we would take a
I can't.
3-day train trip from Texas to California, and I would spend my summers in Carmel Valley and Monterey and Big Sur and camping in Pebble Beach and 17-mile drive. And it completely like opened my mind and changed my worldview to like what was like what God gave us in nature. And so there it's he would, he would take me out of the situation, and I would get a break from like normal life. We were at my grandparents, and it was like stepping into a slice of heaven. And it really massively impacted my design ethos. Like back then I had no idea, but just this extreme connection to nature, reducing the barriers between the interiors and the exteriors, and making those more seamless, and just and so it implanted something really special and deep into my heart. And then looking back, I can see it now. But people would make comments throughout my life, and I was like, they are so deceived. They don't know me at all if they think that that's a gift. I
Yeah.
mean, that's how like far off it was.
That's incredible. And to know and to see you now and to get to meet you in this space is like hearing that feels, I mean, how good is God it's like you can just see his, his tapestry weaved through all of that. Okay, so take me to the moment, which I remember you talking about this when we were in the car that day. You were in the middle of a battle with cancer and you were in your home and you started ripping apart your home because you were like, I'm going to create this most beautiful space. Is that when the Lord spoke to you about urbanology, or when was kind of the moment you knew, I am going to start this design firm and here we go?
Absolutely. So very highly connected to that. I'll back up a little bit. When Avery, my daughter, was diagnosed, she was 5 months old when she was diagnosed with leukemia, and that started a year-long journey of chemotherapy and transplant at St. Jude. And so when our family traveled to Memphis to St. Jude, it was obviously really traumatic. We're fighting for our daughter's life. We don't know if she's going to survive. It was just a really difficult season, and we're just like, we are just leaning on our faith. I mean, we are just standing on the word of God. And then Eric and my older kids had to leave to go back home. He had to get him registered for school, and I'm alone, and I'm in this city that's not familiar. I'm going to this hospital, and then at nights I'm staying at the Ronald McDonald House with my daughter. And one of the Ronald McDonald houses, they're all over the country. Some person had the foresight to think, you know what, there are going to be families who are going through trauma, who are scared, who need a place that's nurturing, healing, a place of reprieve and beauty. And somebody like had this vision for this Ronald McDonald House. And I'm telling you, it's like nothing I've ever seen to this day. I mean, they had a library piano room with like guitar chandelier on the ceiling. I mean, the colors, the intentionality, the details. I walked into that place holding my little daughter who was fighting for her life. And I just thought, like, I do feel better. Like this is
Yes. Yes.
this is this is insane. Like, who thought that families would benefit from their environments being such a place of inspiration and beauty? That was the first time I consciously started to connect a few little dots. But of course, my focus is somewhere else, and so that just kind of gets buried. Fast forward, Avery finishes her treatment. She's now 12 years old today. She's got long red curly hair. She's a total miracle. But shortly after she finished her treatment, I was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer that had spread and started an 18-month journey. And it was really a dark time for me, because when Avery was sick, I could still take care of her. I was still her mom. I was still doing all of the things and creating the schedules for her and just completely in the mix of her little world. When I got sick, I felt completely helpless, and the chemo really, really ravaged my body. And I was so weak so many days. There was a lot of days that I couldn't get out of my bed or like off the sofa. And I would sit there with a clipboard and a pen, and I would start just making notes and dreaming about what I wanted my home to be. And I needed something to look forward to. And what I was longing for was to transform my home into like a place that felt safe and healing and a sanctuary as I was really going through this difficult time. So there was like two sides to this. And I'll never forget, we just faced a lot of judgment in that season. People like would point their bony fingers at my husband and say, "Why would you let Ginger do this? Like, she's 95 pounds, she's totally pale, ravaged, her, she looks terrible. Like, you're gonna let her rip apart your house and renovate it?" And Eric said, "You don't know her.
Yeah.
You have
I
no
can see him saying
idea."
that. Yeah.
And it's just so important for us to realize like what charges one person's batteries could deflate somebody else's,
Yes. Yeah.
and God has given us, these incredible strengths, and we need to not look and judge other people for their abilities and their strengths. We need to support them in those things. And so yeah, that's what I did. And I coming out of it, man, I would wake up in the morning and I would set my feet on the floor, my hardwood floors that I always wanted, and the sunlight would pour through the windows, and I would just think, God, thank you. Like, I walk around my home every day and I feel so nurtured. And here's the thing: if God is, He is the creator of everything. He is the author and perfecter of creation and creativity and beauty. And if that is true, and we are created in His image, what does that mean for us? We long for it. It's in our DNA. We're wired to connect with it. And so it was like I was trying to pull like heaven to earth when I was just in this season of pain. And I was like, I need the inspiration and the beauty that God has wired me to long for. And what came out of that was, you know what? You actually shouldn't have to be fighting for
Mm.
your life, for your home and your environment to be a place of just beauty and inspiration and a true haven. And so that's the point where God really started revealing and kind of like downloading a plan. And one night at Life Group, we all went around in a circle. We were doing an icebreaker, and the question came up: if you could do anything, what would be your dream job? And, I was last, so I had a lot of time to think about it. And at first I was really struggling a lot. And I was a little sad because I thought, I don't know how to answer this question. I had spent a lifetime, even before my diagnosis and Avery's, a lifetime of battles, really tragic things that I had fought through. And I realized in that moment, I'd never asked myself, like, what
Wow.
was my dream? And I felt like right there and then God was saying, I want you to speak out your dream. And so when it came
Wow.
to me, I said, if I could do anything, I would create, I would design. And then if we're just being silly, I would have a firm and I would work with the most incredibly talented women and this and this and this. And in like, 85 seconds, I like
Wow.
cast the vision for this thing. And less than a year later, it was in motion and I had hired 3 people. I mean, there's something very, very powerful about speaking out what God has put inside of you, because
Yes.
the enemy wants to keep you silenced.
Yeah.
And God always took me back to that moment. He said, Ginger, don't ever forget that it was important that you spoke it.
Yes. I think two things that just are so powerful in what you just said. And one, speaking it out. And I think that's, I think that's something that we don't realize, especially as women, or having maybe lived a life where we've gone through some things that have kept us in those spaces. Maybe we haven't actually said out loud a dream. Maybe we haven't even taken the time to think through what is in my heart. And I think that is huge and key. And saying it out loud like that probably took a lot of boldness and vulnerability. But the second thing that I love about this, Ginger, is that you are walking in your calling that is changing people's lives. And you even said it halfway through about bringing heaven to earth. And you wanted to do that in your own home, but you didn't stop there. And it was like, what God did in you, he multiplied now for others. And this, though it doesn't look like a ministry, like a preacher getting up on the stage with their Bible and speaking the word, what ministry you are doing, bringing heaven to earth in these people's homes that might not even know why they are sensing the presence of the Lord or what that is that they're sensing that you're bringing into their homes. And I think that's the second powerful thing of just hearing all of this is the listeners to understand that you don't have to be on a pulpit with your Bible speaking the word to be ministering and to bring heaven to earth, which is what this is all about. And what we're called to do is to not just sit with the things that God has given us, but to multiply what's on our life for those around us, because we are the conduits of the kingdom. Like, that's our role. We're going to bring heaven to earth. And so I love that you shared that. So what was that like for you when I remember part of the story, you opened the LLC, you hired your first employee, you're like, we're doing this, I'm going to start this firm, this design firm. What was that like? What was the beginning days like?
Oh my gosh. It's one of my favorite stories, to my husband's horror. He came home from work one day and he said, hey, babe, what'd you do? And this is like just finished the hard drugs of chemo. I'm on like a different types of drugs that, my hair's like starting to grow back.
Yeah.
Okay. That's just for a frame of reference.
Okay.
Okay. Still kind of bald.
Yeah.
But I do have my energy back. And so now I'm ready to like kick it into overdrive. I've been sort of like down and now I'm ready. And he comes home from work one day. And he's like, hey babe, what'd you do? And I was like, ooh, yeah. So I started an LLC. And he was like, you did what? You did what? And I said, I started an LLC. He's like, for a business?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it's called Urbanology Designs.
Yeah.
And he's like, what the heck is that?
Yeah. Oh, I just knowing you too, I love this story so much. It's so great.
It's like, he's like, Ginger, for the love of God, what are you talking about? And I was like, that idea that I had. And he's like, and we are so opposite. He's the guy on the shoreline with his charts and his graphs and his data and his spreadsheets and his compasses. And he's looking and he wants a roadmap and a plan. And I'm like way out in the sea. All my parts are floating around me. I've got an oar somewhere and I'm just building the ship at sea.
Yeah.
And he's on the shore like, woman, are you literally crazy?
Yeah.
So we need each other.
Yeah. I love that. You guys are so good for each other. So okay, I know Eric was like, oh dear, what's happening? But did you ever come up against anything in those beginning days when you're stepping out, you're doing all these things, you're starting for the first time where you're like, I don't know, or a little bit of fear, a little bit of trepidation was there, or were you just like guns blazing? This is what God's called me to do. I can see it. I know it. I'm all in.
Exactly both.
Yeah.
Guns blazing, I'm all in. I'm going to do 110% until the barometer just breaks because there's nothing left to be done. I mean, I was full energy and excited. Also very naive in a lot of ways. You don't know what you don't know. And I was so desperate to not do things the hard way. I wanted to do things the smart way, but without, with starting kind of cold, going in, there were so many things I learned the hard way and it was painful. And so I struggled with an extreme amount of anxiety and fear in those first few years. And the experience of walking through fear and anxiety to that level, like changed my life. It shaped my company culture and it's given me the life that I have today for like the best work-life balance I could ever ask for. I don't work evenings or weekends. My whole team gets off at 4:30 so they can have time to, go to the park before dinner or cook dinner or walk the dog, whatever. And it's because I had to walk through this really difficult season. I'm raising 5 kids. Avery and I are cancer survivors. Eric's working, 12, 13, 14-hour days, driving an hour and a half each way from work, getting home just in the nick of time for dinner. I mean, soccer practice, braces, well visits. And then I'm running and growing and launching a company. And so no wonder I was 10 feet underwater, couldn't breathe, losing my mind. And it scared me because I don't operate in a normal, natural place of anxiety. Like I tend to be very like, let's go, glasses half full, like not fearful. I'm comfortable with a certain amount of risks. I'll go and tackle things. That's one of my like innate strengths. And so all of a sudden I didn't recognize myself and my own response. And it was terrifying to face that. And I thought like, what is this? And so it again, it was this obstacle that created the path to, like, Eric eventually retiring, leaving, his longtime corporate career and joining forces with me. It led to company culture that is so healthy. It led to work-life balance that's like a dream. And so I don't despise the obstacles of my life. I thank God that he put my feet to the fire and allowed me to walk through those things that were difficult. We just praise, like, God spare me, God protect me, don't let me. And sometimes our attitude is like, why is this happening to me? And I think God just wants to say, these fiery trials that you walk through, they're precious like
Yes.
gold if we're willing to align our perspectives with God's word.
Yes.
And so I look back at the things I faced, including these really difficult days, because people can, look at my life. They can go watch a podcast or a television interview I did, or read the book, or scroll on, our beautiful Instagram feed, and they can think that girl's life is, wow, she just, and I'm like, oh no,
Yes.
you don't. Let me tell you the truth of
Yes.
what the fires that I've walked through, and God's faithfulness, his provision, and his excellence and his promise through these seasons. And I feel like that is so much of my life's ministry, is that message that God is good and God is faithful, and nothing can change those facts.
And I think
And he'll give us what we need in
yes.
those seasons, right?
But I think
And for us, one of the things that we needed was, we had to make hard decisions. It's like, it's crazy how we just will go down a path and we just keep hitting the same problem, and there's no change that happens. We're filled the anxiety, the fear, the pain, and it's kind of finally like God was like, stop doing that. It's time to shift, and then, like, this new path created. But in that, we did have to make decisions that were scary, and God was so faithful to come alongside us in that season when we were scared. I mean, going from, two incomes to one, and like the best healthcare insurance on the planet, to being self-insured, especially with me and Avery.
yeah.
This is scary.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of what you're saying too is the power of just taking action, and not in a way that's frivolous of like, oh, we just need to do things to do them. But you weren't going to sit on the back burner with what God's called you to do until things were perfect, or until you were perfect, or until you had it figured
Exactly.
out. And you were willing to walk through what was another fire of having to get some of these like fears and the anxiety and this stuff forged in you as you said yes. And I think that that's the biggest thing to remember too, as we step into some of the things that God's calling us to. It's not to say that now that you've said yes to what God has for you, this is an easy road, or he's just going to make it rainbows and butterflies for you because this is what he's calling you to. I think what we forget as we live here on this earth is that the actual eternal things, some of those nice butterfly things are great for us here while we're on this earth to feel great and wonderful. But what's eternal is what got forged in you as you said yes when you were maybe felt a little incapable of what God was calling you to. And you were willing to keep taking steps and walking through. I might have fear, but I'm going to get up and do this again tomorrow. And what's forged in you, that's eternal. I mean, that's forever. Those are riches from heaven. And so that's the invitation. And I think sometimes we hear the invitation to walk in our calling or dream, and it feels like this invitation for something really fabulous and easy and really nice. And a lot of times it's an invitation into something that God wants to do a lot deeper, that might be a little bit painful and might be feeling like a little bit of a
Messy.
fire.
It's messy. It's
Yeah.
imperfect. It's sometimes scary, but you can't let the messy and the imperfect and the scary things stop you from taking that first step. And people constantly need to be reminded of it all the time.
Yes.
Even me, like, as I continue to grow personally in my walk with the Lord, in my relationship with my husband, my kids, my business, my colleagues. Like I have to continue to up level myself. And the Lord is going to call me to greater things. He's going to allow my hands to touch things and ask me to steward things and make decisions that are hard. And so, it's from glory to glory, and taking what's been forged in that fire and wielding it as a tool for the future things, that not just battles, but also opportunities. Man, you've got to have some incredible integrity and healthy boundaries when new and wonderful opportunities come your way, right? It's both. And so he's developing and building endurance, integrity, bandwidth, character. Like, whoa, just like you said, those are eternal.
Yeah.
And those make and create impact and ripple effects, because then now you've got the capacity to share, to minister, to support, and to help someone else, to lead a kingdom minded business where other entrepreneurs can look and follow. And you know what I'm saying? And so those things aren't birthed out of nothing.
Yes.
They're birthed out of things that are worthy of fighting for.
Yes. Adversity will awaken purpose for sure. Okay. So you're leading now. How big is your team now? So fast forward to
So
where we are today.
about 13,
Okay.
about 13 people. Yeah,
And
that's Urbanology Designs. We have we also have a venue that we run called the Urban Firehouse, and that's a separate entity. So several what's it? Fires in the iron, kettles in the
yeah,
fire.
irons in the
I
fire.
always get that saying wrong. Several things simmering
Yeah.
on burner.
I get what you're saying. And so tell me, like, now, today, you, Ginger, running these organizations, multifaceted, what is your greatest challenge and what is your greatest hope moving forward for the organization and for your family?
Greatest challenge, I feel like, is the same and probably always will be, and I am okay with that, and it keeps me constantly aware. The greatest challenge in my mind as an entrepreneur, a mom, and a wife is people. It's never, not in a bad way,
Yeah.
but like it's never things. It's never a mirror that broke,
Mhm.
or something got way delayed, or even, and finances can always be a really big one and can be stressful. It's always comes down to people, and it's your clients, it's your family, and it's your team, and the responsibility that I have to steward all of those relationships well. And what I've learned about myself, I am a hyper activator achiever. I wake up and like, I'm ready to, like, guns blazing, right? I'm ready to go. And that's just how God wired me. But in that strength, the thing that I have to constantly be careful about is who am I in relationship with? Who do I need to sow into? Who needs my time, my attention? And and just that personal, the time that we carve for the people in our life and what that looks like. And then when something happens that's difficult or challenging, again, there's nothing that can ever come close to it being an actual person, a child of God, and just the emotions that come with that. And so I feel this really great responsibility that God has given us a team to steward and a family, and that I need to do that well, and to do it well is hard. It is very
And
hard.
that's just real people. I mean, people, that's a challenge because we are all on our own journeys. We got our own things. We're all broke. I mean, that is real. And so what is your greatest hope for urbanology as you look forward, or for you, or what do you see looking forward?
Oh gosh, I have all these little dreams tucked away and hidden in my heart, and you know, um, I bathe them in prayer, and some dreams are for my team. Some dreams are very personal to me, for like my home and where I live, and this extreme connection that I have with the inside and the outside, and this I see this greenhouse in my future on my property. And I just have these visions and these dreams of my heart of really serving and loving people in a way that they're not used to. It's another way of kind of, again, bringing heaven to earth. And I imagine hosting people at my home in a way that replenishes It's like replenishes their souls, and they feel so seen and so loved that somebody would go through the level of effort to make them feel welcome and seen. And there's levels of, like, I already do some of those things. I had this beautiful guest cottage, and when I host people, I'm just like, I can't wait for them to go in the
Yes.
bathroom and see the toothpaste
I
bar that I
love it.
created, and the bamboo toothbrushes and the different like artisan toothpaste that you can choose from. I mean, it's just like next level.
Yes,
And
it
I
matters.
don't apologize for how weird I am, because I know it's not normal, but it is a gift that God has put in my heart to
Absolutely.
love and to bless other people. And I see that just like the things that I would love to be able to do. And also just create an awareness and a welcoming for just the world to look at it and say, we need more of this. We need more attention to detail. We need more beauty. We need to lean into the things that God has given us, and to slow down and appreciate. We live in such a rapid fire, go, 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 go. And our plumb line for what's good, I think, has been lowered in some ways. And I want to set the bar higher for what it looks like to be lavished, to be loved, to be seen, and to be
I
nurtured.
love that you said that because I feel like we can diminish that gift. And it is like oh, that's extra, you know? A lot of people call me extra. You people out there, you know who you are. I get called that a lot. I'm like, and my son's first birthday, it was so extra, but it was because it was this expression of my heart. And so even hearing you say that, I'm like, you just gave me that, I don't know, that little nudge of like, it's okay. And it's actually wonderful. And it's actually a gift. And I'm not going to apologize for the way the toothpaste is laid out. Like all of these things that, um, you know, it's incredible. And the comparison world has, I think, almost made that more difficult because you want to shrink back in an effort to not be like, oh, I don't want people to feel like I'm trying to one up or compare, be all Pinterest. But I'm like, but I am Pinterest. So here we go. Like, I like to do things like that. And so I love that you shared that. And I feel like it just gives a little bit of permission that this is a gift and it's okay to use it.
When I was really struggling with that, because it's exactly what you said, I was like, whoa, do I have like permission to lean into this? Is this too much? Am I too extra? Like, what is going on? And the Lord, you know what he told me? He said, Ginger, don't rub dirt on your shine. I gave it to you.
Hmm, that's
And
so
and
good.
and because like I was always so self-aware and sensitive of like, oh gosh, I don't want to like be too this, because then I'm gonna make her feel bad, or
Right.
she might this, or I might be judged or looked at. And he was like, quit, just quit that. And it's not a spirit of arrogance. It's not a spirit of I need people to see me. It is an expression of what God has put inside of us as
Yes.
gifts to
Amen.
bless
Yeah.
others. And when you live a life that is submitted to the Lord, and those gifts are in check, man, like unleash them and watch the
Yes.
ripple effect in your community, in your sphere, right? And the
You
people
said
that God has given you to
something
bless.
you said something so key when you are submitted to the Lord and you yield your gifts to him, like release it. And I think that that's the key and that's where we get, you know, this dreamers to doers concept. I think sometimes for me, I get nervous about that coming across the wrong way because I'm like, this is not about you just going and blowing and doing, right? But what you said is just sums it up so beautifully and so well that when we're submitted and when we submit our gifts and to not rub dirt on where he's giving you to shine because it's him and what he's doing in you is so beautiful and so unique. Will you close us out? Two more things. Close us out with this. What would you tell the listener? Uh, Women are typically our listeners, but if there's a man listening, like my husband right now, would you talk to him too? Um, but would you just talk to the listener who has something deep in their heart and maybe they've never said it out loud? Maybe they think it's a silly idea or it's not ministry or whatever they're feeling that's kind of holding them back. Uh, what would you say to them specifically?
I'm going to share a little nugget that God gave me when I felt that way. He said, Ginger Marie Curtis, no good thing will come out of your comfort zone. It's time to stretch. And that means often for so many people taking that very first step. It's in the stretching, it's in the discomfort that we grow. We don't grow when we are just like business as usual, going through the motions, lukewarm. Like there's just not growth happening. We've got to recognize that it's okay to be a little uncomfortable and sometimes a lot uncomfortable, but that
Yes.
we are never in the palm of his hands and then not in the palm of his
Mm,
hands. You're always in the palm of his
it's
hands.
good.
And so if we can just trust him enough to be uncomfortable, the things that he will do in our life are phenomenal.
Yes. That is yes and amen. Thank you for sharing that. I lost my train of thought there, but the last thing I want to ask you is okay, outside of the Bible, prayer, and worship, because we know this is where it all comes from, where do you get your like courage? Where do you get your like, okay, maybe you're having a little self doubt moment, but then you're just like, no, I got this. You gain this like boldness, courage. Where do you get that from? Do you do a little dance in your kitchen or anything like that crazy? Because I
I
know we all get
love
it
to
when
dance
we're
in
in
my
worship
kitchen.
in the word, and that's an obvious first answer, but maybe a second answer on this one.
You know, it's kind of funny. I remember like being a little kid and seeing something and asking myself like, why can't I do that? And not that I went and tackled everything. I mean, that's saying a lot because back then I was really stuck in believing this lie that I wasn't capable. But I remember. Okay, let me sum it up this way. I think so much of the freedom in that is not having to feel like I have to compare myself to other people
Mhm.
and their gifts and their strengths, but what God has put in me and feeling so much permission to step out in boldness and what God has put in me. I was like, I just wrapped a hold of this revelation from him that I had like I didn't have to apologize for going after something and for pursuing something with my whole heart. And in fact, I felt like that's exactly what he wanted. And and I would look at the women around me who were doing amazing things, and I wouldn't shriek back with intimidation. I would be like, that's so amazing. I can't believe they could do that. If they could do that, I wonder what I could do, and maybe this and maybe that.
Yes.
And gleaning like nuggets of truth and wisdom and courage from the incredible people who were movers and shakers out there, and saying, thank you. Some of that is for me, and I'm going to use that to as fuel, as inspiration. And I think some of us approach it from the exact opposite. It demotivates, it deflates their batteries because they, like the enemy just wants to fight so hard to get right in between your ears and to hold your mind captive. And we've got to recognize those lies and silence.
Yes, so good. If this has not lit a fire under your tush after this listen, I don't know what will, because I think we've heard it so many times, and just even just your last wrap up about getting uncomfortable. And I think that's, something too that we fall into a little bit of we've longed to build comfortable lives. Like it's almost like an aspiration is to, even the smartphone and the how can I make sure my house is functioning so that every morning when I wake up, all I have to do is push a button and then the coffee is already, or it's already going because I've set the alarm the night before. I mean, I long for comfort, right? I want things. And I think there's a piece of that that's wonderful. But when you're talking about this and when you're talking about things that God's calling you out into, realizing that, maybe is going to put you in a little bit of an uncomfortable place, and that's okay. And I think sometimes we step into discomfort, and because we've trained ourselves that we long for this comfortable space, that all of a sudden something's wrong if we're uncomfortable. And so I love that you shared that at the end. I feel like this was just such a powerful thank you for sharing your story and being vulnerable and letting us see a little bit of behind the scenes of the amazing Ginger. Where will you tell the listeners where we can find you, where they can follow you, um, and
Absolutely.
your book one
So,
more time?
of course, you mentioned, straight off, Beauty by Design is my book that's available anywhere books are sold, or Amazon is really
Get
easy.
it today.
And
It's amazing.
then It's nice. It does definitely share my story, but it's also a field guide, great design nuggets and tips in there. And then Instagram is a phenomenal place to follow along the journey and the story and behind the scenes. We do design dilemmas every week, and you can ask questions. And so I would say Instagram, Facebook, our website. So everything's Urbanology Designs. It's not hard to find us.
I have loved this. I have been so encouraged. I'm like, even if this was just for me, I feel encouraged. I loved it. It was amazing. Thank you for being on
Thank you.
and joining us, and hopefully we'll do this again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.